I think the work we're doing is not just about smartphones. I think it's about understanding what is it precious about being a human and how do we retain it in the digital world. What people say is that in order to stay relevant, humans will need to be cooperating with each other more and be more empathetic and be more creative. But when we're constantly distracted, right, when we're not able to focus or because we get distracted by technology, we don't really develop these qualities. So it's not just about dependency on the smartphones. It's more like the way technology is designed and the way we use it actually makes us inferior. We behave like worse copies of machines. Machines can multitask, humans don't do it well. Machines can switch between different tasks. They can be productive 24/7. And all these things. So for me, it's ultimately about, how can I be my better self? And my better self often means I'm limiting how much I use technology.
Welcome to the Mentality Podcast. We're recording at the incredible Wheatwood Hall Hotel podcast studio. This is a podcast that goes way beyond stigma. We talk about men's mental health and mindset. We encourage the type of conversation that will open you up to another way to live life, another way to see yourself and the world around you. If you are ready for that, you're in the right place. I'm Stevie Ward and I'm an ex-professional rugby league player and captain. And now I guess I'm a bit of a podcaster, a speaker, actor, writer, entrepreneur. I'm still working all that out. But at Mentality, we help men take control of their mindset by teaching them to find purpose, resilience, and what I believe is the new success, inner peace. That sounds good. If you are that guy who is waking up to the fact that they need to do something different in life and the same old habits aren't working for you, it might be time to step up. If you want to start your journey with us, you can go to mentality.co.uk/coaching to join the best team you have ever seen.
Hello, welcome to the Mentality Podcast. We're delighted to have Anastasia Dedyukhina. Is that right, Anastasia? I know we just checked, but I just wanted to...
Sounds good to me,
Excellent pronunciation.
Perfect, thank you. Me and Stevie actually went to your talk in Leeds in 2018, I think it was. And I think we grabbed a word with you after, but it really stuck out with me, that talk. And it's one of those things where I actually subscribed to the newsletter after. I did some digital coaching. And I've taken things from it and still implement it in my life. So I think it'd be a really useful conversation. But before we begin, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to be where you are with Consciously Digital?
Sure, absolutely. So about 6 years ago now, I was working for one of the big tech companies in London. And my job was to convince people to use more technology. And I was not coping myself with my devices very well. So I was, constantly swiping my smartphone, checking my emails at 3 a.m, sleeping with it. And there was really no need to do that. But it was just kind of a habit. And all of my colleagues were doing the same, just because that's how the tech sector and digital marketing sector works. And I was finding myself increasingly more worrying and anxious and not really being productive, busy but not productive. And I thought, well, it's time to take a break. So I got rid of my smartphone. And I was qualified at the time as a coach. So I took also the career break just to figure out what I want to do. And people around me started asking me, do you coach others about how to get rid of your smartphone? I would say, no, not really. And they kept asking. And then at some point I thought, well, maybe there is a demand for this. So I started giving talks. Then one thing followed the other. I was invited to do a TED Talk, wrote a book. Then was starting to get way too much work, so needed somebody to refer it to. So started telling other people what I've learned, training them as coaches. And long and behold, 6 years after, I'm running Consciously Digital, which is a global network of more than 90 digital well-being coaches now. So they all train people on their digital habits, not necessarily they train people on getting rid of their devices. Yeah, it's not the idea. The idea is that our lives are increasingly managed by technology, and we really need to find a balance. And I think it became very apparent during the pandemic for many people. So it's really about raising awareness and consciousness and giving people tools and empowering them, like to be able to find the balance between their offline lives and online lives.
Just jumping back to that moment you said you got rid of your smartphone, I can imagine for quite a lot of people that feels like an impossible step. What was that like? What were the main positives you noticed then? And I wonder, were there any negatives associated with it as well?
So first of all, this jump was very extended in time. It took me 5 months to get rid of it. So I bought a dumb phone, and then I just kept moving my SIM card because it was very appealing, the smartphone. Yeah, they're very smart people who produce them, and they know how to do that. I think probably one of the most appealing things was that I felt, probably after the initial period of being anxious of several days, I felt much calmer, almost slowed down. I didn't meditate at the time, but people were thinking I meditate just because of the way of how I was. I started talking more to strangers in, asking them for directions. Generally, just became more curious, went into random conversations with people, which never happens, right? When you're at the bus stop and you're just busy with your phone, why would you approach somebody, ask them anything? On the negative side, to be honest with you, there weren't many negatives. One thing I needed to do more was to plan my day more in advance. So, for example, if I needed to be in different places, I needed to look up the map. And also it works really well when you're living in the same place. When you need to travel, it's a bit more difficult, right? Because you have so many things you need to look up, from your plane tickets. And now obviously it's even more difficult because all the banking apps are in there. So that's why I have the smartphone back, but I'm still trying to use it more mindfully, so I don't try not to work from it. And generally, having access to it doesn't mean that I'm accessible. So when I'm with somebody, I choose to put it on airplane mode or on silent. And again, it's a personal choice. It's just that I like to give my attention 100% to something. Don't always manage to, but that's the aim.
So what does it look like now for you then, Anastasia? Like, what does life look like for you with various phones, one phone, and what type of phone that you do use?
I had two phones. One was a smart, I don't remember, I think it was Samsung something, and one was a basic Nokia, the one with a snake.
Yes. What a game that was.
These, yeah. So the smartphone was just lying at home and working on the Wi-Fi when I needed to do something, which usually would be the Messenger. And this was, by the way, one of the reasons why I chose to stop using WhatsApp and switch to Telegram and Signal, because apart from the privacy reasons, also you can use the Telegram client from your desktop browser as opposed to WhatsApp, for which you still need the smartphone. I used for that year and a half that I lived without a smartphone, which is basically in the chest of drawers, and then I was just walking around with dumb phone. Now I walk around with smartphone, also because I traveled quite a bit in the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I used to travel probably every 2 weeks. Now I don't, but any work-related things happen still on the desktop. Anything, so I don't have any social media on my phone either. So this is basically, it's where I have messengers, so Telegram and Signal. It's used for phone calls, for banking apps, and to look up directions if I need. So that's probably the main functions. I may occasionally read some news and so when I'm on the metro, but try not to try to have a actual book with me. It takes a little bit of effort.
Yeah, it does. A bit more effort than normal. And do you have the discipline, you have like the things put in place in your mind then for being in control, being, I guess, consciously digital? Because you've not just, as you said there, you're sort of balancing between two phones. You've not just thrown the smartphone and gone back 100 years, or maybe let's say 30 years, I don't know, 20 years. But you've actually put things in place so that it doesn't get too overpowering and frustrating and anxiety-inducing. Am I right in thinking that?
That's a great question. I think it's very important to make a distinction between setting up rules and boundaries and relying on the willpower. So research actually shows that people who have strong willpower do not use it to resist temptations, but they organize their lives the way that they don't have these temptations in the first place. So a very simple example, if you're trying to follow a diet, the easiest way to follow a diet is not to buy any candies. Because when you have them at home, you will eat them, right? It doesn't matter like how strong your willpower is. If you have I think I was mentioning this at my talk, if you have a box of chocolate next to your bed, sooner or later you end up eating them. If you have your smartphone or your computer visible 24/7 with you or full of notifications, it's like this cookie that's vibrating or a chocolate and saying, eat me. So I have very basic rules. The rules are so I use a laptop to work. The laptop is always on the working table. I never work from anywhere else. So this is a space to work and that's it. There is never any technology in the bedroom. I just don't bring it there, and I don't need discipline anymore with that because this is a rule. So I already got used to this. It's very difficult to use the willpower if you don't have clear rules. And I can say this on myself. With other things, I'm a bit more flexible. So, like I may use the phone in different locations. I also try not to use the phone first thing in the morning. And the way to do that is I hide it from the night before in the other room. Which means that when I wake up, it's not the first thing that I see. Because if it is the first thing that I see, it's inevitable that I will end up checking it. If not in the first 5 minutes, then in the first 10 minutes. Whereas if I have the first hour for myself, then I have time, to properly stretch, to cook the breakfast, to play with the cat, whatever it is I want to do, or just literally to sit down and think what I need to get done for the day. And the same thing for the computer. So I know that I'm not going to open it first thing. I may open it just to set up the program, like I have certain automatic marketing programs that run on it, but I consciously will not open the mailbox. Because I know that the moment the mailbox is open, this is it, right? Like 3 hours later, you remember that you needed to eat, and this is not happening. Is it perfect? Is it working perfectly? No. But I think as long as you have some of these basic rules and you use kind of 80-20 rule that, most of the times you're okay with that. And, with the diet, maybe you have some of the days when you really procrastinate. And I think the second thing that helps me a lot is when I check with my body a lot. So for example, when I know that when I multitask online, I start feeling anxious and I start being short of breath. I've done a lot of body work myself. Like I'm a dancer, I've done yoga, really, really lots of things. And because of that, for me, it's the first indicator that I'm doing something wrong. So when I feel that, then I know that it's time to stand up, stretch, leave everything, breathe out literally, maybe do something physical, 5 minutes back, go back, 5 minutes later, go back to what I was doing, and say, okay, now this is one thing I'm going to focus on. So this is actually the habit I'm working on right now, to unteach myself to unlearn how to multitask. because we all do that, and multitasking does come with a cost, right? This is shown to increase anxiety because it's not really multitasking, it's task switching. It consumes more brain energy, we retain less information and we're more likely to make mistakes and so on. So that's kind of my next battlefield.
So what's like what's going on in the world? What's going on in the smartphones? What's going on by the manufacturers? What's happening for this pull away of consciously digital? What is it that you're trying to steer us away from? What is it that is it a type of feeling that you get when you're on all the technology? Is it judgment? Jealousy? Like I just think about when I go on Instagram, and sometimes I go on it before bed, and I look at the Instagram stories, whatever, and I might go through the Instagram stories. But if you just think about it in a physical sort of setting, an example, that's like me literally walking around the block before I go to bed and seeing all of these different people in all of these different settings. Some might make me jealous, some might make me judgmental, some might make me think, what am I doing in my life? All these sort of things. Some might be an annoying person that I'm just getting annoyed about, like all these things. It's like before you go to bed, it's like walking around the block and seeing all these people in real life. That's what I like to think of Instagram stories, and that's something that I can sort of think of an example that sort of comes up for me, and what I imagine unconsciously other people might have an example of. What is it that for you that's the pull from the other side, and why are you trying to pull away from it?
I think my thing was I wasn't feeling that I'm operating to 100% of my potential, maybe not even to 50%. I was reactive, I was paid eventually to do strategic creative work, but the way I was working could be done by an 18-year-old who didn't study anything, because I was just replying to emails and CCing. And I think ultimately, like having run now Consciously Digital for over 5 years now, I think the work we're doing, it's not just about smartphones. I think it's about understanding what is it precious about being a human, and how do we retain it in the digital world. Because there is lots of conversation that, that lots of jobs will be automated in the next 10, 15 years, right? And it's happening already, but if you look at the stats, in the US, it's 50% of the jobs, so 47%. And in the UK, it's about 1/3, which is still quite a bit. And many of these jobs will be also from white collars, right? Not just blue collar jobs. What people say is that in order to stay relevant, humans will need to be cooperating with each other more and be more empathetic and be more creative. Creative not as, storytelling or painting, but creative in their approach to problem solving. But when we're constantly distracted, right, when we're not able to focus on, when we are not having deep conversations because we get distracted by technology, we don't really develop these qualities. And we're actually becoming, we're behaving like worse copies of the machines, and I think that's the danger. So it's not just about dependency of the smartphones, it's more like the way technology is designed and the way we use it actually makes us inferior. We behave like worse copies of machines. Machines can multitask, humans don't do it well. Machines can switch between different tasks. They can be productive 24/7. Humans cannot. And all these things. So for me, it's ultimately about, how can I be my better self? And my better self often means I'm limiting how much I use technology. And the coaching work that we do is, helping people be aware about, how their animal brain or mammal brain or lizard brain gets triggered by, notifications or the constant hunt for distractions, and how this is interfering with our human brain, with the prefrontal cortex. It's where we have our goals, our inspirations, who we want to be, whether you believe into God or not, It doesn't matter, like, what really makes us human. And Tristan Harris from Human Tech, he talks about downgrading the humans. And I think it's very important to understand that it's not that technology is just downgrading the humans, it's we ourselves are downgrading ourselves by not using technology appropriately or by overusing it. And ultimately the work we're trying to do is making sure that humans still remain relevant. Sorry, it was a very lengthy response to your question.
Oh, that's good. No, it's one of the things which I remember from the talk as well, and I think you're very honest about the fact that you sometimes lose the battle as well. I think some people might think, oh, Anastasia set up Constantly Digital, I'm sure she's, has these rules and never breaks them, but you're honest in the sense that these things are incredibly smart. They're designed by incredibly smart algorithms and people where they're designed to win eventually, but it's you limit how often that happens, and you set these rules to make sure you do maintain your humanity most of the time. And the other thing you actually mentioned the word habits, which I guess was the key thing for me. When I set the rules, the first few weeks were kind of tricky. Like, I don't allow the phone in my bedroom either. I don't start on the phone, or I don't start with emails. But now it just is habit, because I set the rules, and initially, you do feel the pull, but now it just becomes habit. So after time, if people are listening and thinking, oh, look, that sounds great, but it won't work for me, but it will eventually. And I'm sure, you'll know better than me, but that's kind of what Constantly Digital is set up to give people the tools to do, right? So what would be your top tips for someone listening now? I'm sure everyone can recognize they have an unhealthy relationship with their tech. If someone thinks, oh, look, I'm just always on it, I have it in bed at night, it's the last thing I do. You've mentioned don't have it in the bedroom, but if you've got if I put you on the spot and ask for 3 top tips, what do you reckon are good starting points?
It's funny because everyone always asks for behavioral tips and nobody follows them. It's like, what's your top tip for healthy lifestyle? Go to the gym, right? Everyone knows this, right? Like, everyone knows you should not be, eating, looking at your phone and so. This is why my top tip would be to think, what is it costing you? Really, seriously spend 5-10 minutes, write it down, what is this behavior costing you? Have you been procrastinating on reading a book, or building your business, or how have you been spreading yourself thinly? Just by putting likes as opposed to writing something. I'm just taking my example. Have you been having engaging in really deep conversations and relationships with people, or have you been there with them but actually checking the device? We've been 50% here and 50% not here. What will you be remembering when you're 80 or 90? I have never met a person who would say I've had an amazing online experience.
On their deathbed,
not yet,
saying
yeah.
That WhatsApp chat I had
Yeah.
was that WhatsApp group banter was.
We have got some good WhatsApp groups, though. We have got some good WhatsApp groups.
It's a tool, right? It's a tool to have, amazing human experiences. Maybe it will be different once, once there is VR out there that's fully penetrated, but so far it's not the case. So this will be this consciousness of appealing it really to your higher, human part of the brain, let's say. Prefrontal cortex will be number one. In terms of the simple fixes, I would say set up rules. So we operate the 4-pillar framework: time management, which is actually better attention management, not time management, because when you're directing your attention and deciding what you're paying attention to when, so which can be disabling notifications, deciding when you're going to be available, when not, things like that. It's individual. Space management, which is separating yourself from your devices, whether it's in the bedroom, whether it's, when you need to read a book. Again, see what works for you. Relationship management, which is managing people's expectations as to how and when they can contact you. When you're in the work environment, very often you get 5 reminders from people. It's have you seen my email? On WhatsApp, about setting up a Zoom call to
and
discuss.
They only sent it 10 minutes ago, and it's like they're chasing it within an hour. And
Exactly. There is this expectation that you should be responded immediately on all channels, which basically means that you have to be monitoring, or you think you have to be monitoring all the channels, which is not the case. And finally, self-management is about knowing your triggers and knowing your vulnerabilities. So I know that I'm more productive in the morning, and I need to get things done in the morning. And if I start getting into, like social media routines and things like that, in the morning, then I've lost my productive hours. And it's so, all the admin stuff gets either delegated or done in the afternoon. And being really honest, with you, like, when do you start procrastinating? So when you're tired, for example, you're much more likely to lose track of the time that you spent online, just because when we're tired, our prefrontal cortex essentially gets disabled. This is where our self-control mechanisms and self-awareness live. Then, the rule might be, don't go to watch Netflix or to check your emails or social media when you're tired, because it will never be 15 minutes. So it's really about recognizing that you're human and you have these vulnerabilities, and that have to do with how you evolved and why you evolved. And really being honest with it, about it with yourself, and setting up the rules for yourself that take this into account. I think we need to get rid of this idea that, humans can be productive as computers 24/7. No, we cannot. I think we need to get rid of this idea that we need to be always on. The fact that we have food in the fridge doesn't mean that we need to be eating all the time. So the fact that, we can be connected and people can reach out to us doesn't mean that we have to be. Because if you think about, when you're walking in the street, you're thinking about something, imagine somebody coming over to you and saying, "Oh, can you give me please like a minute of your attention?" Well, maybe you talk to this person, then there is another one coming, another, and you will feel very overwhelmed, right, very soon, and like, oh my God, these people are crossing my boundaries. But for our brain, it's the same when we have this online experience, but somehow we think it's okay to do it online, but not okay to do it in the offline world. I'm suggesting you think about all your online experiences. How would they look like offline? You may.
Yeah, that is similar to the walking around the block and seeing all these different people from past, from future, and everyday scenarios that you just probably don't even need to see or know about or understand. I turned my notifications off on WhatsApp, and that's been a big thing. That's been a really big thing, to be honest. I just think generally, like on WhatsApp, a lot of it is stuff that's not urgent, and a lot of it's WhatsApp chats that bring me a lot of laughter and fun. But if you are doing something the day and you need to be getting something done, especially if you're self-employed or you sort of your work is your primary objective, then you don't need WhatsApp. You basically are plugged into all your social circles at the same time. And they could be going all day, they could be going all night or anything. And it's like you don't need that sense of urgency. So I've just got obviously text message if it is something urgent. Chris, what sort of things have you put in place? I know you're sort of.
So interesting you say WhatsApp was the reason I got a smartphone. I was actually quite late to them, and like my friends from home were all living different places now. And whenever I'd reunite, they'd all have these shared experiences for like months of WhatsApp chat and conversations that I always felt like I missed out on.
Yeah.
But I think WhatsApp now, actually, I think you can get it for your desktop. I'm not sure if that's if I'm mistaken or
you need to synchronize it
so
unless like they made changes in the last couple of weeks. You would need to synchronize it. So basically you need to have a QR code and have your phone still nearby. Which I find frustrating. I think like a very easy tip, honestly, for everyone, if you're working, you need to stay focused, hide your phone in the other room. There is, I think I mentioned this research when people were taking different kind of IQ tests and had their phones in different locations, and those who had them in the other room as opposed to in the pocket or in the bag or on the desk face down were still scoring higher on these IQ tests, even though the phones were not ringing, because just the mere presence of the smartphone is so attractive. Yeah, your brain wants just to check what if, and this is depleting part of the brain resources. So it's actually much easier to stay focused when you have one tab and just one device in front of you. Even if you do it like for short periods of time, 20, 25 minutes, right? It's better if you can stay focused longer, but the famous Pomodoro technique, when you're focused on something for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break, but you're really focused. Really focusing means like if you have any new ideas when you're working on one thing, you just have a notebook and you take a note saying, oh, this needs to be done, or this needs to be done. But again, there might be lots of these productivity tips, but I guarantee you that you will only start implementing this once you realize, okay, what's the cost? Because otherwise, everyone we need to have a healthy lifestyle.
And it's important to say, you're not anti-technology at all. Like, I think people could misinterpret that. It's not like you're not saying, there's some people who go too far and they say, we all need to live in the mountains with no tech, and you're about...
They'll be lovely, but...
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's not realistic. I think the message I got was that it's that Tristan Harris quote as well, I think, from the documentaries. Are you using your phone or is it using you? It's about, they are really useful tools, but for too many of us, like you said, that our brains are looking for that dopamine fix, and it's automatic and subconscious, and we're just reaching for it always. And it's about challenging that relationship and still using these tools as, as what they're useful for. Like, email is a useful tool, but it's not if you open it first thing and it sidetracks the rest of the stuff you're going to do, and it takes your attention away from things.
Yes, and we're talking a little bit here about, how do I, as an alcoholic, how do I have one occasional glass per week as opposed to drinking the full bottle every time? I think digital detox and really minimizing how much you use technology is a great first step. That really allows you to step back and reassess. So one of the things I'll be doing, I'm going on holidays this Friday, I will be fully unplugging. So I'm going to the place where there is no internet. I will have my phone with me, but I will not buy any internet SIM card. And this is a conscious choice, and I can afford it because I have a personal assistant who will be taking care of everything. As a small business owner, it's not very easy. And I'm going to do this, and I'm setting this up this way because I was intending to do this thing 3 consecutive years, and I always ended up doing something work-related. And I didn't have the full holiday experience, and I was not productive when I was coming back, so I just know I need this. And this is an excellent time to refresh your mind, yes, like this unplugging. So, and I've run just a very small non-scientific poll on LinkedIn, just asking people, so are you going on holidays? What are you going to be doing? Will you be checking work-related correspondence? Will you be checking your WhatsApp? And so, and I think only about 7 to 9%, so like less than 10%, said that they will be full unplugging. And this is what tends to happen these days, when I say that technology removes all the boundaries. People still try to stay on top of everything. So I think there is definitely a place for this digital detox movement, and for the days, it can be once a week, like, we're talking about digital Shabbat, or, Bill Gates, for example, when he was running Microsoft, he used to do unplugging like weeks, couple of times a year, where he would spend time on the lake, just walking, writing, and reading the books and thinking about what's going to happen in the world. And he actually credits these weeks with helping him make biggest breakthroughs in where the company was heading and in creating the vision, because we cannot be having the busy brains and thinking about big things. So there is a place for that, yes, but then when you go back to the real life and to daily, yes, it's just about setting up the rules and trying to minimize the negative impact and be aware of the fact that probably you wouldn't be 100% perfect, and it's okay. It's just one step at a time. Nobody. I personally don't know anyone who's fully sorted unless they're like monks who meditate, 6-8 hours a day, and then they can just observe their desire to check the smartphone. But it's not just about the smartphone, though, right? Like smartphones will be an obsolete thing 5-10 years from now. It's more about how integrated we are with the technology and how much we are, outsourcing to it, and how much independence are we retaining.
So what's your approach then for using social media for work?
I don't have, luckily, like social media has never been an issue for me. So on Facebook, I use Facebook, but use is a very big word. On Facebook, I have something called Newsfeed Eradicator, which basically blocks all my newsfeed. So I would just open it and use it as a messenger if I need to write to any of my friends. So it's not appealing at all. It's just I may check it like once every 2 days or so. I use LinkedIn a lot for work, but I try to do it. So I try to post content that's interesting for people to, share some of the research, to make it, like actually subject for conversation. I would check it once in a while. And I have some marketing automation that I said they're up, which basically just needs to be controlled once a week. Twitter, again, like I may just occasionally post something, but I never read it. There is a big discussion on whether, you need to be on social media for exposure. I've seen cases when people have absolutely no social media presence and they're still very successful. I think Cal Newport is a very good example, the MIT scientist and the author of Deep Work. And I forgot what's the name of his last book. It's about managing your online distractions, and it's his conscious position not to have social media. Having said that, he has a publisher and probably hired people who are promoting this for him. But I do think that in terms of the conversions and the business impact, social media is overestimated. There are ways, but it's a whole different job. People who run their small businesses, usually they're just creating more noise on social media rather than making any difference, and most of those things can just be very well automated. And I'm saying this as a former digital marketeer. So I was paid money basically to create the marketing mix that works. Social media can be a powerful channel, but I disagree that everyone needs to have a constant presence there.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier about understanding what the cost is when you're using your smartphone, when you're using social media, and when you're fully plugged into that. And I'm just thinking back to the social dilemma, and one of the quotes that stuck out to me was, I think it was Tristan Harris talking about how can you understand or know that you're in the matrix if you've never been outside of it. And I'm just thinking about the youngsters growing up nowadays. They've got a short spell in their early years without social media, without smartphones, and then they've sort of broke the barriers and started using it, but they've got no experience without smartphones, without social media, and it's quite hard. It's like it's going to be hard to find the contrast for these people to understand what the cost actually is and what it's like without it, if that makes sense. Can you see your work adapting and having to be more teaching about how to be human?
That's a very good question. I actually see both. I see young people just, playing with it and then getting rid of it completely at the age of 14 and 15 and just say, no, I don't want to. I think there is a very big issue of the peer pressure there, and it's not just social media, but social media, coupled with online gaming, because lots of online gaming today incorporates the social element. Plus, it's like this constant being always on, right? Like you're with your friends, but you're also talking to the friends online. This is how they are. What I usually say to parents when we work with parents is try not to prohibit this, like especially once they already have this, the device. If we're talking about teenagers, of course. First advice is try to delay as much as possible because the brain is still forming. Yeah. So, like, at least, the executive functions until they have form, until there is some degree of self-control, just not. Then, okay, like when it becomes inevitable, then...
Do you have an age that you kind of usually think is like a good point to try and hold out till?
It is, yes, it depends, because for example, the visual cortex, so like when, it depends on which function of the brain is forming when. So the visual cortex, for example, forms between 6 to 12 months. So the child's ability to stay focused on something. If you give them the iPad or whatever it is before that age, then this is going to impact the development. Before 2 years, more or less, there is a very important process in the brain happening called myelination. So if you think about it, our brain, it has neurons, and these neurons have a coating called myelin. It's like something like a wire that has a coating, and the thicker the coating is, the better the signal passes, the electric signal. Now, what tends to happen is when children are exposed to devices early on, then their myelination process is not finalized. So basically, this coating is not formed fully, and they may have delays in developing, for example, speech or developing higher functions of the brain. It's not that technology is bad per se, but what tends to happen is that in this age, like 1 to 3 years, children need to learn by experience. Yeah, they need to touch things, to talk, to repeat words. So the way, for example, they learn to speak is by repeating the same word. This is very annoying if you're a parent, but what actually they are doing every time they repeat, they create this myelin, this coating. But when they are distracted by technology, then technology is replacing this natural process. Yeah, so it's replacing the recognition, the interaction with the grown-ups. It's replacing all these things that the child normally does to learn to develop. And as a result, this development never finalizes. And if this stage is missed, then basically that's it. Yeah. So going back to my original device, delay it as much as you can. I usually say, please, no devices until the age of 7, 8, so until like their main functions of the brain have formed, then very much controlled time of what they're doing. Probably like by the age 12, 13, they would get their first device. I advise to have a contract with them saying, like what's appropriate to share, what are the rules. And one of the rules is there is never, ever any device in the bedroom, never any device after 10 p.m. And if this is broken, the device gets taken away. And really being honest and having honest conversations, helping them, go and navigate through this world. You cannot really prohibit them from doing this.
I think it's good that those rules are actually the same rules that you advise adults. So I bet sometimes kids must feel unfair if they've got to hand their phone in at 9 p.m. and mum and dad are on till like midnight scrolling. But if people do it as a family, it probably makes it a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, like when our coaches work with families, they develop together family digital control plan so that all the family sticks to the same rules. And I think it's fair and it's much easier to do because when, dad is on the emails at 11 p.m. And actually children, the most frequent complaint of children is that their parents are on their devices.
Actually, I did a meditation course, and one of the things which struck me is most of the people on it were actually parents, and they all had the same experiences, saying they feel like they weren't present while their kids grew up. And whenever their kids came home with like a picture or painting from school, they'd be worrying about dinner, or they'd never find time, and they felt like 8-10 years passed before they knew it, and they said, I was never really present for any of it. So that was one of the driving forces for them to. And it must be the same if your kid's trying to talk to you and you're scrolling through, you're not there, you're not present. Even if it is annoying because they're repeating the same word over and over, it's still important to be present during it.
It's this trade-off between easy and difficult, right? Being a parent is difficult. It's much easier just to give the iPad to the child, but what's the price? Reading, browsing a social media newsfeed is easier than reading a book. Reading a book is huge effort. Yeah, like I've been trying to read super interesting book this week, and as much as I'm trained, like I always feel the need, what's in my phone? I always remember things because the brain has to work, but it's. Everything good comes with, most things, good things in life come with lots of effort. Yeah, I think we're now living for this temptation of easiness, and it's very appealing, but what's the price?
When I started Mentality 5 years ago, I was committed to creating a hub that would offer the knowledge and experiences to allow all of us to go beyond the stigma that cripples many men into a life lacking fulfillment. It would be a lie to say that I knew the impact Mentality would be having on people's lives, but we are. And it blows me away when someone gets in touch to share with us how we've helped them. So, today's podcast sponsor is Mentality Counselling, and I want to share with you a testimony from a guy who went from listening to this exact pod to making the important step to start counselling. Just wait until you hear what he has to say about his experience. If you are someone who this resonates with and you are ready to get the help that you deserve, head to our website right now and get in touch with John. I found it almost impossible to share my feelings and emotions with others. This was evident in our first few sessions. John was patient with me, providing support and guidance, but also gave me the necessary push when I needed it. Our sessions have changed my life. I now use my feelings and emotions to my advantage rather than letting them control my life. John has given me the tools to continue to improve outside of our session, and I am so much happier now. And what was your reaction to the social dilemma, Anastasia?
I very much am enjoying that they have raised this question. I think that it's fantastic that it's got now, 7 Emmy recognitions. I think that the way they presented it, I would have done it differently. It's very pro-American. B, they have given the word to people who already screwed things up and ask them for the solutions. And I don't think it's deeply unfair. I would love to see, what's happening in India, in Japan, in Latin America, because all they, they're looking for very different solutions. None of this has been there. I know also they didn't include, many scientists who actually look at these things. So I would say it's kind of a good first step to raise awareness, but I would like to see more international perspective and answers, not just from people who screwed it up and who are saying, oh, it's a government that should regulate it, which is, by the way, what I disagree with. I think governments have a role in this, but there are many more things that can and should be done. Probably government more would have a say in, like AI standards, AI regulation, what needs to happen with the data. But there are, other things, and especially, like, I don't think that more tech is enough solution. And considering that people who have been, in social dilemma, they're now creating their, meditation apps or whatever it is. It's almost. I mean, I don't want to criticize it because I think it's, it's everyone's problem, but it's a bit hypocritical.
It didn't have many.
My opinion, not necessarily shared by the rest of Conscious Digital.
Yeah, it didn't have many answers, did it? I mean, it had a lot of problems, and I think it scared me, the content of it, and especially as of recently, I feel like I've been clicking onto my social media and every different app's been talking about new rules for cookies and new standards and what you need to allow. And I'm like clicking it, I have no idea what I'm allowing on those. And it's like, I've got no time to even, I'm almost thinking I'm in the black hole of it all anyway. They've got everything that they probably need from me. And it's like, I don't know, I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, because it's not just a full out resistance, but it's a bit more tactical, it's a bit more nuanced, and I think a lot more people need that consciously digital mindset, really, because I think we live in a world that's absolute, that's scared everyone to death. Well, it scared me to death anyway, the social dilemma. But I think I
agree.
You come a bit further back from just scaring, and you're sort of asking people to understand what their own price is that they're paying, and then maybe the adaptations that you can make going forward, if that makes sense.
I think we need to move away from this belief that technology progress should be the expertise of only tech experts. Too many expert words, and because actually this now concerns every single one of us, right? And I think we need to very, very clearly redefine what is digital skills. Yeah, we talk about digital skills in schools, digital skills in companies. Digital skills is not tapping on the iPad. Digital skills is knowing, like how your information is processed, knowing which questions to ask, knowing what are your rights. GDPR is a very powerful legal framework. Do people use it? No, not really. It's and there will be more, right? Like once your I'll give you an example. Once your workplace is automated, and let's say your company installs a program that watches what you're doing and not just reads your emails, but based on the speed of your typing determines your mood or how likely you are to feel depressed. There is this technology that's being used already. What are your rights? Can you say, no, I don't want this? Can you say, okay, I want to be the first one who has access to this. I want to know the assumptions. How will this information be used? And these are the digital skills, right? Because we're building the society, and this is happening, without involving the society. Yeah, we're making digitize the society. All the processes, or most of the processes, are now run by the AI. Most decisions are now taken by the AI, right? Like some people get even fired by an algorithm because it says, you're not coping well. I think there was a scandal, I forgot what it was, with Amazon, like truck driver or something a few months ago, who got, after 20 years of work, an email by the computer who said, you're fired. What is his rights, right? And it's legal, but it's not just legal. Because the states are very, very late with that. And I think this is what, what we need to be having conversations about, not just, how do I disable notifications? You can disable notifications, but, if if all your living is determined by the computers and the technology that's watching you taking the decisions on your behalf based on the data they collect, and they already have this data, what are your choices, or what are your rights? That's I think that's a very important next battle.
And where can we get the answers to those questions? When we ask
Consciously
what are
digital
rights,
is the...
but like to put those out into the ether, like, is that something that you would take someone through if they're asking, like, all this activity is going on, like I'm just going through a social media routine that I go through. People are scared of or they're sort of fearful or questioning, like you say, what is happening? Where are the rights? Is the control sort of that you can bring back? Because it's like the stuff with the AI and the algorithms and stuff like that. It almost seems to me as if it's like a in or an out. I don't know. And then you're obviously doing the work to bring it more to people, to bring their options, to bring their conscious decisions to it.
You can't reverse it, no. But you can have a say in, like how many rights you have. And, if you think about, again, like the nutrition industry, for instance, the food industry, like 40, 50 years ago, they used to put sugar everywhere. Just because, that was sold and it was not regulated. Now there is a regulation that obliges you as a producer to write how much sugar there is and to write all the ingredients. And now people have a choice. And you can make a choice of, like, do I want a healthy eating? Do I want, to buy something with sugar and so on? So I think this transparency is the first bit, and this is where the state can help. And this is where the social pressure definitely needs to be created much more, because it's still not on the politicians' agenda, right? People are still not voting for politicians based on, what are their promises in regards to data, AI, and all that, although this is already defining people's choices, right? And I think more conversations need to happen explaining them, hey, by the way, this is what's happening, this is why your life is like this right now. It's starting to change a bit with the COVID. Yeah, I think people are starting to talk about, like, the apps and, like how much information is really being shared and was it necessary. Like in Singapore, for example, they first said that the data about people, like they asked everyone to install the tracking app. They said it will only be shared if you're sick or somebody who you met was sick. Then they found out that actually this data was shared with the police. So, it gets very quickly out of control. And then this is what happened a lot over the last year and a half. I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories, but I think this chaos has been used a lot by many governments and many companies just to push through their agenda. And this is the time to push back, really, because if not, then obviously always under the safety pretests, we would be forced to share more and to be fully visible. There is nothing wrong, and it's not about like the right to be hiding or not hiding something. It's not that. There has been a certain social contract with the state, yeah, and it's changing. But we're not having any say in this, even although we still have the power to do that. In 5 years, we won't have this power, right? Like we have the say because of how we pay our taxes, for example. It won't be the case anymore because people will not be creating as much value as the machines will for the first time.
And that's happening. That's literally happening. And this is, and you mentioned the word conspiracy theory, and I'm on the same page as you completely. I just worry that we are sleepwalking, or we're being swept up into a, as you say, the fact that half of the jobs in the US are going to be automated. that is on the wave of AI, technology, social media, and we are going a certain direction. Most 99% of conspiracy theories probably aren't right, probably aren't correct, probably aren't true. But then also on the other side of it, there still needs to be a resistance or a individual thought where these conspiracy theories probably 100% of the time, or just less than 100% of the time, aren't useful. But maybe that 1% is in the same vein, is standing up for not being swept up into a direction that we don't want to go. And I guess, like you say, it's the transparency of knowing where we are going, what's happening. You know, you just outlined the fact that 50% of the human jobs are going to be obsolete. You know, what else is around that? What else is blurred around the edges of that we don't know about?
Just to jump in, is that, I'm going to play devil's advocate a bit, but actually I think that's a good thing, right? Like, I've always thought I want to move towards a world where people don't have to do menial jobs they don't enjoy. I think if tech can help us move towards that world, that's a positive.
But what makes you think that this will be the case?
Well, look, yeah,
because
true.
If
that is the case,
that's a problem. So there was a big U.S. study that was done. They observed like how people's incomes were changing since the 80s when companies started implementing a lot of technologies for transformation. And basically, what they saw is like while there was more the technology was creating more productivity and more value, this value was distributed among fewer people. And the jobs that were created, because technology indeed does create the jobs, right? The new jobs, like we used to have, whatever, like cashiers in the banks, now we have the bankomats. But what tends to happen that these new jobs that are being created by technology are actually not equally paid. So people are getting less money. These jobs tend to be easily replaceable. This whole gig economy, if you think about Glovo or Uber, there have been court hearings that, to recognize Uber's drivers' employees. So Uber lost it, Glovo won it. It's people who are working for salaries that are lower than living minimum, who are working 12, 14 hours a day. So basically we have lost all the, fights that trade unions and the politicians have been fighting for throughout the 20th century. So unfortunately, it's not that, technology will do unpleasant jobs and we will, be doing pleasant jobs. No. What will happen is, and what is happening already, there will be lots of gigs. Fewer companies will be employing people and giving them the security. People will probably be getting like basic, everyone is talking about this basic income, which will be very little. Yeah. People will, you will struggle a lot with building a proper career. Yeah, within something, because nobody wants to hire you. It means that you will also probably struggle to have proper education and to be learning from job to job. And basically, people will be used in the positions where it's cheaper still to hire a human, which unfortunately tends to be not so prestigious positions because, AI already can analyze, do much better the work of a lawyer, for instance. So unfortunately, it's not the case. So, yeah, some of the, jobs will be new, but in most cases, the value of the human labor with automation gets downgraded. And funny enough, this is where we go back to 4 centuries ago, right? Like when you have Luddites who allegedly were breaking the machines. Actually, if you don't know the history, what Luddites really were protesting against was downgrading of the human labor. So, because they were very highly qualified people who could do, all the process of producing something by themselves, hand labor, well paid, taking lots of years to build. When the machines were introduced, they were saying, no, look, we don't need you anymore. You're disposable now because the machines can be doing several operations. And for the whole generation, it was a tragedy, right? So it's not that, they were mad people who were breaking the machines just because they were saying, like, don't downgrade our human effort. And this is what's happening right now, but to a larger scale and all around the world. And this is especially dangerous because we have now the top 5 or 6, if you count Netflix in it, tech companies that are controlling more than 40% of the overall wealth of the markets, which is huge. Like we're talking about the budgets that are bigger than budgets of Belgium, for example, and all of them together will be bigger than some of the biggest countries. So we're talking about immense power there, and
globalization,
companies that are driven by profit.
So if that's what is happening, and that's quite bleak, I guess, like what do you think should happen, or what do you hope the backlash to that will be?
Well, there is always this pendulum thing, right? Like there is, once there is too much technology, then there is a resistance, right? Like now everyone is doing yoga, mindfulness. I think all of my friends and whoever I know has done some mindfulness course. There is this, natural, trend towards can we find the balance? I think what needs to happen, there needs to be more transparency and education. And probably this education will happen through nonprofits, from person to person, from citizenship activism, as opposed to governments. Because governments have very different agendas, they have different things to work with. They're pushing the digitization of the economies because they do believe that this is something that's going to bring the economic growth. So it's difficult, like, to sell this idea of having the balance. They're kind of partially now working on at least, like getting the big tech companies pay fair tax, which is already good progress compared to what we used to have. But, I wouldn't expect too much from them. So I think what will happen is many more areas will be digitized, and eventually, there will be. All we're doing right now is already creating the data, right, about ourselves. This data will be consolidated, and then the question is, who will have the right to it and what you would be able to do with this data. Would this data be your property? Would you be able to take it and say, no, you know what, I'm going to give it to this company, but not to this company? Or would just any company be randomly willing to make a decision about you? I think, once you are, you know your rights, then the funny thing is many legal frameworks are already there. And the UK is actually one of the leading countries in that. I know that, for example, now the UK is working on the standards for data scientists, thinking of making it a chartered institution, which is fantastic news, right? Because it should be in some way regulated by the industry or by the government, or so what are the standards. So I think it's a collective effort. My concern is, of course, is that it's we don't have much time. Because the changes happen very fast and people are still very dispersed. There are lots of voices that are being raised, and people are questioning what's happening. And I think there are some positive trends. So, for example, I think I forgot what's the official position, but the lady who is in the US is a regulator now for the tech. The anti-monopoly committee in the US. She's, I think, 32 years old. She's been always very vocal about, need to limit the monopolies that have been created by the tech companies. So you can see, some of these things happening. The danger is, of course, when this blends with the states, which is what we see in China, and it's very lucrative to the states. So I think the way to resist it really is to raise awareness, talk about this, educate kids. Not just about the laws, right? But about what's appropriate, what's not, and then work on our own consciousness. Because ultimately nobody can make you use the device when you don't need to, and when you take a conscious choice. You may still have it with you, yeah, but you may choose not to, and I think it's we're much more powerful actually rather than we think. Well, I am, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this work. It probably won't be, the solution probably won't be, straightforward, and probably, like both parties together will create something third. I'm more interested, and I'm more worried about the environmental impact of all these things, which is a whole different conversation. Because for me, it's like the fastest risk of screwing things up. Because the digital, the way the digital economy is developing right now with bitcoins and all of that, without still fully renewable sources of energy is not sustainable. So if countries are going to use digital currencies, it's going to be create a big pressure on the energy system. But that's a totally different podcast.
Yeah, and one last
episode
thought.
2.
Yeah, so this could go west. I don't know. But have we already shifted to I don't think we already have. I think we could be out a big chunk of power that's shifted already to a different framework. You mentioned that these companies and organisations that have more wealth and power than Belgium, as an example. Is that what you mentioned? Have I got that right? Yeah. And that worries me a little bit, because over the last year and a half with COVID, we've seen an explosion of people donning new hats, whether that be Deliveroo, whether that be Uber, whether that be Amazon. And all those jobs have been getting filled up because there's been such a demand because of COVID. And it almost makes me think about the globalization and the sort of way that you're talking about these companies having all of those people working for them, and a lot of the power, a lot of the consumers are going to them without even a thought. And then I thought a little bit after that, well, these are the jobs that might even get replaced by machines, surely, by delivering goods, delivering stuff, and then that's all. The power's still all there because, as consumers, we're going to those organisations, to those companies. I'm sort of going a bit on a tangent here, but I'm just speaking as I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think
that's again this citizenship thing, right? It's being more conscious. Do you want to support, Facebook, just taking as an example? Do you want to support it with your attention? Also, do you want to support it as a small business advertiser? Because Facebook gets lots of budget from small business advertisers. No, it's a conscious choice, and I think it's a question of people. I'm not, by the way, I'm not calling here to boycott Facebook. It's not going to solve the problem. But I think it's, once you have people starting to ask for more questions, this puts pressure.
Yeah.
I remember I was having a conversation with Eric Schmidt, who used to be at the time the head of Google, when I was just starting 5-6 years ago. And my question to him at the conference was, that there is this problem of digital dependency. What is Google doing, or what are you going to do about this? And can we support you in some way? And his answer was, yeah, it's a very important question, and it's not our business. And 3 years after, Google released digital well-being app, right? Or setting on the Android, and they're trying to get into every single conference to be the top speaker for digital well-being, which is a bit funny, but that's a different question. Yeah. Because it suddenly became their business. Why? Because people started talking about this, and this even happened before the social dilemma, right? Because they want to be seen as a social responsible business. Whether what they have released works is a different question, but it actually does not. But there is this pressure that we underestimate. Yeah, the pressure of the press, of people asking the questions, to investors. Why are you supporting the companies with your money? Why are you investing the money, into somebody who is not transparent, or who is, creating the algorithms that might be biased and discriminating people by the race, and that's happening a lot. Once these questions start to be asked, then companies will have to pay much more attention to these things, even if they continue with the same business model.
Yeah, I love that. A big shift, or a big effort to stay human, I think, and to just be conscious, digitally conscious, aware, and
consciously digital.
That's why I was trying to get it in there somewhere. It's all in the podcast, but there's a lot to think about, and it's something that probably keeps coming on my radar every sort of month or two, in terms of bringing back governance for us. I'm one of those people, Anastasia, that does the mindfulness and the yoga, and takes necessary walks for a couple of hours to come back. The sort of the social media in my pocket, or the phone in my pocket, I do think it is a tinge of anxiety when I do have it, as opposed to when I don't have it. So it's something that's definitely on my radar, and I think this is a great podcast, great conversation to put out there, to continue asking the questions and maybe put a bit more pressure on the machine side of it to let up a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out also to, I hope I get the name right, I think it was Bev Costoya, who I did a couple of sessions with through Consultancy Digital, and I found them really, really useful, and they're things I still use today. And when we attended your talk in 2018, I implemented these things, and then gradually life kind of seeps away at them a bit. And then I did the sessions with Bev, and again I kind of implemented them, but more have stuck this time. So I think this conversation again, I already feel like, right, I want to make sure I get these rules more defined. It's good to keep getting this stuff reminded and revisit it, because the world and life, and I was moving house recently, and things just creep in and affect those habits. And I've noticed actually in lockdown the habits were so much easier to implement, but now I've got more like, oh, can you have a meeting in town, or can you do this, and it's at different times, and it's starting to eat in again. So I want to revisit and like have a more flexible rule set that I can stick to. But yeah, I just wanted to give her a shout out. And we've also got a comment I'll jump to as well in the chat from Claire in our Evolve group, who's watching it on the live stream. So she said, totally agree that technology downgrades our ability. I think our memory is affected by not having to remember as much now as technology does it for us. Is that something you've come across as well, Anastasia, that we kind of just, instead of us trying to find it, we just Google stuff?
Oh, yeah, and there is lots of research that shows that once we do that, then we are compromising not just on being able to retain something, but also, on the creativity, because creativity is based on our ability to connect the dots between the things that we know and the new information, or projecting ourselves into the future, imagining ourselves into the future, making big discoveries. And again, it's just one of the examples of how we are outsourcing our humanity to the machines one step at a time without realizing this, and thinking it's very convenient. Yeah, it's this convenience trade-off, convenience versus progress, or convenience versus remaining human, laziness versus hard work. We're tempted by, if you think again, doesn't matter whether you believe, if you believe or not, but I think I really like, this kind of temptation analogy. What are we tempted by right now? Now, like wealth? No. Now we're tempted by convenience. There is, what's the price we're paying? We only will discover this price once we have sold, our humanity, our soul, whatever it is. You believe into for the convenience, for the speed, and it's a trade-off, and it's a trade-off each of us is making every single moment. It's this small daily actions, and that's why I'm saying, think about what is it costing you, your digital habits. It's not just about disabling notifications. It's what is it costing you 5 years from now, 10 years from now,
So
to your children too.
Creativity and memory could be one of the things it's costing us.
They are related, yeah. And again, like that's soul science. They in fact, creativity, imagination, and memory share lots of similar brain processes, happen in the same parts of the brain.
Just wanted to finish with those top tips. You just mentioned one of them there, but what is it costing you? Set up rules, manage your spaces, and know your triggers. I think I've made a note of them to go back and revisit them. Personally, I found this really useful again. I want to go back and revisit everything. But yeah, that was really, really useful. So thank you, Anastasia. Appreciate you coming on. We will check in again, definitely, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, the next one we might have Terminator theme tune coming in leading into the podcast.
The AI apocalypse.
That might be the next.
Absolutely.
Leave it 6 months.
Well, actually, one thing that I would love to share with you later, we are now working on guidelines for schools that move into digital and for the companies. It's basically like one pager with, what are like all the top questions that people can ask the parents, whether they're just an employee. I hope we'll have them by early September. So maybe I can share them with you, so you can
we'll share
them with people. They're just free documents that help raise awareness.
And where can people find Consciously Digital as well? If
so the website, and it will be on the website as well by September, but there are also some other useful resources. It's consciously-digital.com, and you can also opt in to work with one of the coaches there, or just have a look at what's the latest research, or contact us if you want to give us a hand with anything. Like we're always looking for volunteers to help spread the word.
Definitely. We put all those details in the show notes, and when we're putting them out on social media, funny enough.
Only during people's set hours to go on.
Only, we all our followers only go on 6 till 7 p.m.
Why not?
So thank you, Anastasia. That's been great.